In this video we're going to look at making another game. This one's going to have a few more complicated things than we looked at previously. Some of what we do in here we've done before, as always, and some of this will be new. Like the last game we made, you need to plan it out. So I've sat down and I've drawn up what I want my game to look like, and I've written down what I want it to do. So ultimately what this game will have, it will have a ball which is going to bounce off the sides and the top of the screen, so off the stage. If it hits the paddle, it's going to bounce back up, and if it misses the paddle and hits the red, it's going to stop. The paddle will also move left and right with my mouse. So it's a bit like trying to keep the ball from hitting the floor, and it's going to be using a little bit of maths that we haven't used previously. Now I've gone ahead and I've created a sprite, the ball. I've just imported that. I've drawn a brand new sprite, which is this black rectangle here, which is going to be what the ball hits, and I've imported a background on my stage and drawn a red rectangle on that background. So that's going to stop the game if it hits. Now you can go ahead and create all that. You should know how to create the sprite and import the background. To start the actual game, I'm going to make sure I have my ball sprite selected, because that's where I'm going to put the beginning parts of my code. As the last video, I'm going to go when green flag is clicked, I'm going to want the ball to start in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to click and drag it to about there. I'm going to see that that's x minus 9, y 160. Over at motion, I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, go to x minus 9, y 160. So it's always going to put the ball in that position. When this game starts, the ball's going to drop from the top to the bottom. I don't want it to drop straight down. So I'm going to say point in direction, I'm going to say 45 degrees. So the ball is going to fall at a 45-degree angle from the top of the screen whenever the game starts. Next, I'm going to go back to control, and I'm going to say a forever block, because we want this to happen all the time. So in my forever block, I'm going to set up so the ball bounces off the screen. Motion, I'm going to say if on edge, bounce. So if the ball ever hits the edge of the screen, it's going to bounce. And I'm going to say move 10 steps. So it's going to bounce and move 10 steps. If I increase this number, it will go quicker. If I decrease the number, it will go slower. So when I click, you'll see the ball starts moving and it will bounce off all the edges. If I make that 30 instead of 10, it's going to go a lot quicker. You'll also notice that it falls at a 45-degree angle, and when I start the game, the ball always starts at x minus 9, y 160. Okay, so that's the beginning of what we want to do. We also want to make sure the ball hits the paddle and bounces off it, that the paddle moves left and right, and that when we hit the red, the game will stop. So I'm going to go to my control, once again bring in the green flag, I'm going to bring in a forever loop, and I'm going to bring in an if loop. So for this one, I want to say if the ball touches the red, the game will stop. This is very similar to what we did in the last game. I'm going to go to my sensing, and I'm going to say if touching color. What color? Well, I'm going to click on the box and select my red. So if touching the red, in control, I'm going to say if you're touching the red, stop all, so nothing will happen. When we run that, the ball starts at the top, touches the red, everything stops. So if touching color red, stop all. So the last thing I want to do with my ball is make it hit the paddle and bounce off. So once again, I'm going to say when green flag clicked, and we're going to look at what happens when we touch the sprite here. Bring in a forever and an if block again, because once again we want this to happen for the entirety of the game, so forever, and we're going to be listening out, so if something is happening. So if, I'm going to go to sensing, say if touching, so if I am touching sprite number 3, so if the ball is touching sprite 3, which is the black box, then what's going to happen? Well, I want it to bounce off, so how do we do that? I'm going to go to motion, I'm going to say turn 15 degrees. And I'm also going to say move 10 steps. So it's going to turn 15 degrees and bounce off at 10 steps. If I don't have the move 10 steps in there, when the ball touches the paddle, it may not bounce off properly, and it might get stuck on the paddle and actually pretty much just move left, right, left, right, left, right, and not bounce. By having the 10 steps, it's going to jump off. But I actually don't want it just to go 15 degrees. I want it to do all random things. So I'm going to go to operators, and I'm going to say if the ball touches the sprite, it's going to turn randomly. So pick random. So it's going to turn, pick random, and I'm going to say 150 to 200 degrees. So when the ball touches the paddle or the sprite, it's going to turn randomly at 150 to 200 degrees and bounce off 10 steps. So just for a second, I'm going to remove this one so that they're red, so that way the ball, we can test it. So when I run my code, you'll see it hits the paddle and it bounces straight off it. Now we'll see when we get lucky and it hits again. It hits the paddle there, bounces off it randomly. You'll see that the degrees are random. So connect that back up, and now we'll look at creating the code to move the paddle. This is nice and easy. I'm going to click on my sprite. I'm going to go to control when green flag clicked. We are going to once again use a forever block because it's going to happen the entirety. I'm going to go to motion, and I am going to set it up so that way the position of the block is always the position of the mouse. And we only want the X position to be the mouse because we're only going horizontal, we're not going up and down for the vertical. So to do that, I'm going to grab the set X2. So set X2, and at the moment that's 0, but let's go to sensing, and I'm going to say set X to mouse X. So the X position of my black block is always going to be the X position of my mouse. So as I move my mouse left and right, the black block is going to follow. So when I click the green now, I can actually play the game and have the ball bounce off the screen and then bounce off my block. And obviously the aim is to ensure that the block doesn't hit the red. And when it does, the game stops. So there are lots of ways you could make this harder. So you could actually try and figure out how when the ball hits the block, you speed up the ball, or add scoring to it, add something at the top that you might need to hit. So there's lots of different ways that you can actually try and change this game. Let's look at adding that score. It's pretty simple, and I also want to actually add a bit of audio. So when the ball hits the block, I want it to play a sound. So first I'm going to go to sounds, and I'm going to import a sound, and it can be whatever sound you want. I'm going to import the pop, and I'm going to go scripts. So I'm going to say here, down the bottom, if touching the sprite. So when the ball touches the sprite, I want it to play sound pop. So now when I play the game, I get a pop. I also then want to create a score. And if you remember, we looked a bit at variables a little earlier on. So I'm going to go to variables, and I want to make a variable. And a variable is a container, so it's going to contain my score. So when I say make a variable, I'm going to call it score. Press OK. I'll see the score box appear. I can make it disappear if I don't want to see it, but I do want to see it. And I want to have it that every time my ball hits my black paddle, the score is going to go up. So to start, I'm going to say set score to 0. So I want to start the game at 0. And every time the ball hits the paddle, I want my score to go up. So down here, if touching the sprite, I want change score by 1. Play my game again, I get my pop, and every time the ball hits the paddle, I can see my score goes up. Oh, we got a bit of a glitch there. 52 points, good way to get lots of points. So my score goes up every time it hits. I could then even try and change this. So when touching color, instead of stopping or, you might have it that every time you hit the red, you lose a point instead of ending the game. So you can play around with that.